Insurrection hits says Democrats gather outside of the Supreme Court. And I know it's an insurrection because I'm reliably told that any gathering by people who are dissatisfied by a government process outside of a government building in D.C. is an insurrection. Wait, that's only if it's Republicans? Huh. Who knew? Anyway, we'll be talking about the Supreme Court arguments, about student debt cancellation, what this means, and a surprising turn in the political stature of the Supreme Court as Amy Coney Barrett joins Democrats in questioning the standing of the states. So we'll go over some of that, what that means, and what's happening and what happens next in other news. Tucker Carlson's use of January 6 tapes is limited, a Republican says, as his reporters are saying that they cannot do any recordings of anything that comes with this, which means that they're actually being kind of tight-lipped about what gets in and what gets out and what gets leaked to the American people. So we'll talk about that, what that means, and a twist that I look at and see in this that I don't think the mainstream media is going to see. But we'll go over some of that and where we go. Mayor Pete is under investigation for his use of government jets, and he says he welcomes it, saying that, "Oh no, I could do nothing wrong. I am Mayor Pete." And Joe Manchin will not answer when he is asked if he is still a Democrat. It is going to be all this and more. I was the one who was flying the balloon. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. It's an insurrection, folks. That's right. We are sitting in the position right now that there are people gathering outside the Supreme Court, which means, of course, only one thing: insurrection. Oh, wait, no. Of course, as we said in the cold open, that is only an insurrection when it's Republicans that are doing the gathering outside the Supreme Court. At any other point, it is just another gathering and protest and everything else. But hey, if it's Republicans, it's evil insurrection by evil Donald Trump supporters. And we should have known this was coming. And we'll actually be talking about the January 6th Selfie Fest a little bit later on here in the Tucker Carlson footage from that. Then again, I have a different take on what they're doing with it and the fact that he's not allowing his people to record any of this, but we'll be talking about that. Of course, the mainstream media is going to see something different with this, but it's going to be all this and more over on Contemporary. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Bergenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys. Go check out Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, The No Gimmicks Podcast, and more, as we come together to bring you a news and culture experience from the common man for the common man. That is right, for too long. We have got our news and culture and commentary, our churchy stuff, our music, our video games, our movies, our movie reviews from people who wear suits that cost more than our houses. No more. Gone are the days where the only people who can relate to us how we're supposed to feel about news and culture are the people who have never had to experience the same culture that we have had to experience. More future are the days in which the people who are talking about this stuff and discussing this with you are often people who have had to make some of the same decisions that you have, and sometimes worse. So we'll be talking about all of that. And go check out all that great programming. They're great people. They're great people to get your news from. They're entertaining as hell. We just got to watch the Porch Boys, and I got to tease them a little bit last night with Midget and his certain, how do I put this, his inability to process a small country in the Levant and his actual belief that this small country in the Levant was designed specifically to make his life a living hell. I teased them a little bit about that, but it's all in good fun, so go check out all that great programming. Let's get down into the news of the day. We will see what's happening, starting with the finance, and then moving into talking about the Supreme Court and student debt forgiveness. Give me just 1 second. Beating off the tail end of a cold, it looks like, too. I actually took medicine for it this past week. Monday I took a little bit, and then Tuesday I think I took the last of the Dayquil that I had, and the last of it's lingering out in my throat, and sometimes when I talk for too much, which I do anyway, I gotta cough a bit of that back up. But let's see what's happening here with the finance. On the Dow spent the day down. The future was looking up when we first looked at it last night, but it turned itself back in reverse. Now it tried to reverse itself at the very end of the day of trading here, but we are moving down towards that line of going under 32,000, and that's where people are going to start to get nervous, I think. So we will continue to watch that and see what happens. The Dow is at 32,656.70. That is down 232.39 points, or 0.71%. Looking at the Bitcoin over the last 22 hours, the Bitcoin is sitting at 23,155 even. That is 333 US dollars and 20 US cents down, or 1.42%, as people are starting to struggle and starting to make sure that everything that they have can go into cash, dollar bills, or ones and zeros into the cash and dollar bill bank account, so they can turn around and use it for diapers, food, housing, and making sure that they don't lose their houses. So that's what we see coming for that. And the gas prices. This is not official financial advice, but if this was me, I would look into maybe going and getting a little bit of gas now, because while the isthmus is staying at 302 and the BP entering the isthmus is down to 3, with the BP outside of the isthmus at 306, we have seen jump, 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 jump. All the quick trips in the Madison area are at 320, and since in Wisconsin, quick trips sell gasoline at a volume higher than most every other gas station combined, they're usually the first one that gets hit with a price shock like this. So we have moved up 14 cents day over day from yesterday, and the quick trips in the Madison area, which means that your gas prices are probably going to increase as well. So if you've got the ability, if you've got some time, run over, top off your tank at where it's at right now, because it does look like there's going to be a jump coming, and that's what we see coming off of this area. Got one from IBD, and we'll be talking about the layoffs as well, as unfortunately, depressingly, we've started to become a part of our regular programming here. From Investors Business Daily, Dow falls as Tesla's Giga Mexico plan gets green light ahead of Investor Day. CHIPS Act goes live. From Vidya Ramakrishnan, the Dow sank to session lows at 4 p.m. Eastern Time and closed 0.7% lower on weak economic and housing data. The S&P also fell to its lowest level for the day, down 0.3% at the closing bell, while the Nasdaq shed 0.1%. The Russell gave up decent gains, closing slightly in the red. Volume was... Excuse me. God, that last little bit of the cold. Volume was slightly higher on the New York Stock Exchange and Nasdaq compared to the same time on Monday. Crude oil rose 123 to 76.91 a barrel. The yield on the benchmark 10-year note was flat at 3.91. Housing and economic data dragged markets lower early Tuesday. Consumer confidence fell in February to 102.9 from January's 106. The February Chicago Purchasing Managers Index also fell to 43.6, below the 50 threshold that marks contraction. The FHFA House Price Index fell 0.1% in December, while the S&P Case-Shiller House Price Index ticked lower by 0.5% for the year. Case-Shiller rose 4.6%, lower than 6.8% in November, and April's peak of 21.3%. A cooling housing market will likely temper inflation gauges in upcoming CPI and PCE numbers. Statements of interest for applying for new funding under the $53 billion CHIPS Act opened on Tuesday. According to the Wall Street Journal, the Pentagon will have secure access to advanced chips made by companies receiving the funding. The law comes with a 25% tax credit for investments in chip plants. Chip companies that get more than $150 million in direct funding will share with the U.S. government a portion of the cash flow that exceeds the applicant projections by an agreed-upon threshold. These semiconductor stocks also cannot distribute dividends or buy back shares to get the money, according to reports. Stocks likely to benefit rose on Tuesday. Among larger chip plays, Global Foundries and Texas Instruments each added 0.1%. Smaller semiconductor stocks surged. Wolfspeed rallied over 2%, while Maycom Technology Solutions rose nearly 0.5%, and Skywater Technology soared over 10%. So that is where we are at, and it does look like there's possibly going to be some increase in manufacturing coming here. Will it be enough to offset the people who went out to learn how to do that thing that I can't actually say on YouTube, but I can say it in code? We don't know. And of course, in many cases, these people will have to leave Silicon Valley and go to places like Arizona and Ohio to get in on something like this. So we will see what's happening with that and what this does to the markets. Let's grab one from ABC talking about the layoffs. So we were talking about job gains. Now let's talk about some job losses. We have talked about this plant before, actually, and this is one that I know. I actually knew somebody who worked at this plant. As an Illinois auto factory closes, layoffs and economic worries extend into surrounding city. From Peter Charalambous. Over 1,000 automotive workers in Illinois will clock out of a Jeep assembly plant for the last time on Tuesday, stopping what a local union president described as the heartbeat of the small city. And in Belvedere, he's not wrong, actually. In December, the multinational automotive giant Stellantis announced that they would be idling their Belvedere, Illinois assembly plant on February 28th, indefinitely laying off 1,350 employees. The factory, which has served as an economic engine for the town of Belvedere since the 60s, also spawned thousands of local jobs, according to the union. 400 additional jobs for different companies supplying the plant have also been cut due to the factory's idling. It's like having to live a nightmare every day, said Kevin Logan, the president of Belvedere-based UAW, Local 1268. Stellantis' decision to leave Belvedere leaves many of the city's 25,000 residents with an uncertain future, with some former employees driven to relocate to fully obtain benefits, and those left behind unsure about the long-term viability of their community without the factory that served as the town's economic anchor. You're either forced to take a pay cut or uproot your entire family, said Jeremy Snow, co-owner of an auto repair shop in Belvedere. He later added, I just feel like there's definitely a million ways that they could have done better and they didn't care. Stellantis, which recorded $17.8 billion in net profit in 2022, said it would idle the facility in part because of the increased costs of the electrification of the automotive market, in addition to the pandemic and global microchip shortage, in a statement to ABC News. A company spokesperson said that they would make every effort to place indefinitely laid-off employees in open full-time positions as they become available. The plant, associated with Chrysler for decades, churned out millions of vehicles, including the Dodge Dart, the Chrysler New Yorker. Before its idling, the plant was most recently used to assemble the Jeep Cherokee. According to Logan, the final decision to idle a factory follows a slow bleed of layoffs in the last 4 years, including the loss of 1,500 workers in 2019, 1,200 in 2021, and 500 in 2022. So again, this is one that I know personally. This is a place that I've been. I know people there. I've talked to people there. I've sold parts to people there. And honestly, this is going to sting a lot. Having lived just outside of Janesville for 4 years, I think it's more than that. I think it was like 6. Because I was living out there in a different small town before then. I've seen, I never saw Janesville at its peak. With the GM factory out there, with everybody going to work there, and it being a company town. But I've seen what it was in the aftermath, and honestly, it became another one of those towns. And Kenosha did the same thing, actually. Kenosha definitely did the same thing, and I got to see that at its peak, where the majority of people went to work at Chrysler in Kenosha. And then when it shuttered, the majority of people that were there went to work at a grocery store or at a gas station or commuted if they stayed living there. This is going to have a huge impact on Belvedere. Now, in the wake of it, and in some of the vacuum, there are going to be warehouses, more grocery stores, more service industry type things that are going to pop up there. And I know this because I've seen it happen in Kenosha and Janesville. In fact, they're going to try to make it into a retail town. However, there is Retail Rockford right around the corner, and Retail Janesville. Retail Janesville, the latter, having much lower taxes than the state of Illinois. This is going to hurt. I can't even begin to sit here and pretend that this is not going to hurt the city of Belvedere. And I'd be curious to see in the next 10 years what the population side says, because I'm willing to bet that it's going to be less than half. But that is what we have going for that. Let's talk about what is happening on the Supreme Court. You know what? I never changed over my scene either. I just realized that. Alright, now let's talk about what's going on with the Supreme Court. Starting with CNN, 26 million student loan forgiveness applications could be declined by the Supreme Court. This is an op-ed from Zachary B. Wolf. Conservative Supreme Court justices took a predictably dim view Tuesday of President Biden's controversial plan to forgive up to $20,000 its federal student loans for some borrowers and wipe away nearly $500 billion in debt. And again, my first question there is always, where do you actually think this money is going to come from? Because and this is something that's been coming from progressives for a long time, they think that it's just going to be a snap of the finger and that money disappears. It doesn't disappear. And as we saw with Missouri standing in this, there's actually investment in these companies. Retirement investment, portfolio investment, government investment in these companies that also has to be accounted for. If they just get rid of all this is actually like if they just got rid of the cash, then this would be a situation where, I mean, you tank entire sectors of the financial markets. And nobody who is a proponent for this has thought this through. Again, and I said this yesterday, really honestly, when I look at this, when I look at the actual ramifications of what would come from something like this if it were to go through, I almost believe that part of the intent was that this didn't go through so the Biden admin can come out and say, hey, I wanted to do that, but I was defeated by those pesky Republicans off of there. Meanwhile, sitting there with what's left of his brain saying, I'm so glad that the Supreme Court found this unlawful here because my donors would be screwed if I push this through, man. Come on. Biden announced the plan last August, just before midterm elections. He had been facing mounting pressure from Democrat lawmakers who called on the president to take an EO as it became clear Congress could not muscle through a more lasting proposal. I wouldn't call what Biden put through as a plan. I would call what Biden put through as a snap of the fingers and a wish list. Whether the debt forgiveness helped Democrats overperform in that election is up for debate, honk honk, but the one-sided politics of the plan is a key sticking point for the Supreme Court justices who have been skeptical of Biden's authority to do things without congressional approval. Spoiler alert, he doesn't actually have that ability. That's why we have checks and balances, and that's why we have a constitution. One takeaway from Tuesday's hearing that surprised me, Amy Coney Barrett sounded like a potential swing vote, and we'll be talking about that in full a little bit later. The oral arguments were in two cases challenging the program, one brought by a group of Republican-led states, and the other brought by two individuals who did not qualify for the full benefits of the forgiveness program. Many of the conservative justices were concerned with fairness, executive overreach, and the mechanics of whether the states could bring their own suit. Why give borrowers this forgiveness instead of people who work to pay off their debt early or unable to take on debt and skip college? Those are valid questions, and the idea of debt forgiveness splits the country in half. In national exit polling conducted for 2022, 50% of midterm voters, mostly Democrats, approved of Biden's debt relief plan, and 47% of mostly Republicans opposed it. At Arguments Tuesday, Sonia Sotomayor was interested in the millions of people the potential debt forgiveness could affect. Many of them didn't have the same support lines during the pandemic that others had. They don't have friends or families or others who can help them make the payment, she said. Those debtors will always suffer in ways others won't because of the pandemic, she said. Speaking of using tears for politics, right there. The most instructive story I've read today on the underlying issue comes from CNN's Elise Hammond, free advertisement, who digs up the data to view the problem of student debt. More than $1.6 trillion is owed, she writes, in a compounding figure that has skyrocketed along with the cost of higher education. 1 second again. I hate the tail end of a cold. I really do. Taking on the debt is an investment since graduates generally make more money than non-graduates, but debt can hound people for decades. Nearly a quarter of debt is owed by people age 50 and older. Debt forgiveness is also an avenue to address racial inequality since black graduates in particular tend to graduate with higher debt loads, making it harder for them to capitalize on their degree. Biden's proposal, again, I don't say plan or proposal, I say snap of the fingers wish list, would be a big step, but is less complete than a congressionally approved program and would only take a bit of the larger balance sheet and does nothing to address the root problem, which is the cost of college. And see, again, these people don't seem to understand, and I do think, honestly, this is me, that our author here, Zachary B. Wolf, is being specifically obtuse to try to garner support and keep support for the leftoids who are going to read this article. The root problem, which is the cost of college, and it's the same thing with healthcare. I've said this on numerous occasions before. With healthcare, if you outlawed insurance tomorrow, if you outlawed health insurance entirely tomorrow, your average hospital visit would be able to be paid with the change in your pocket by what's tomorrow, Wednesday? By probably about next Friday, a hospital visit would cost what you had in your pocket. If you outlawed student debt or student loans tomorrow, federal student aid was outlawed tomorrow, you'd be able to pay for college with a part-time job again by spring semester of next year, by spring semester of 2024. You'd be able to pay for it out of pocket just like the boomers did, with just a part-time job and focusing on your studies going full-time. Do you know why? When a third party pays, you don't think about what it is that you're signing up for. I mean, you make the joke about, okay, well, I'm doing my, 40 grand a year to go to Carthage, or my 10 grand a year to go to Parkside, or, my 25 grand a year to go to UW-Madison, or things like that. I mean, you talk about it, but you don't think about it until those debt payments start coming in. And the colleges can charge whatever they want because they know the government's going to pay for it. They know the government is good for it, i.e. they'll go print more and hold it over the heads of people that have the debt. And use it as an election tactic as well. If you want the cost of college to go down, stop giving out loans for it. And I'm dead serious. I know a lot of the people who go there, it doesn't work that way. Yeah, it does. The college model relies on asses and seats. The hospital model relies on asses and beds. If you can't afford to put your ass in that seat or your ass in that bed, then you don't go and they miss out on the opportunity. And there are not enough rich kids. And that's the other argument they make. Oh, well, healthcare would only be for rich, or college would only be for rich people. There are not enough multimillionaire families to support the college model for more than about 2 years at the current prices that they're charging. There just aren't. Yeah, it's nice to think about that like everybody who's white is independently wealthy and can go send their kids to college. There are not enough wealthy Americans to go pay cash for college. It just doesn't exist to keep them afloat for more than a year or two. And they know that. So again, the vast majority, and the Democrat platform on top of this too, would be putting pressure to bring the cost down as well if you outlawed loans. Because they need that big indoctrination center to make sure that everybody who turns 18 immediately goes in and decides that the model of their life has to be going and joining a frat and getting drunk all the time and being told that Marxism is the only way to go forward. CNN is half right. The cost of college is part of the problem. It's the majority of the problem, but the reason that the college cost can go so high is because they know the government will pay the bill. And then go after the student 20 years later. Excuse me. Let's grab one from our friends over at NPR. Conservative and liberal split at Supreme Court over Biden's student loan plan. This is from Nina Totenberg. And remember, hit that donate button because NPR just had to lay off a bunch of staff, which means that they need more money. Your taxpayer money and subsidies are not holding them afloat, so hit that donate button because it's not your money, comrade. It is our money. Hit that donate button. Make sure that NPR can tell you that college has to be this expensive and the government has to pay the bill. And in fact, nobody should ever have to pay the bill other than the government and the taxpayer. Nina Totenberg depends on you, so hit that donate button. NPR is never printing a reality. National Progressive Radio. Well, let's see what it is that they have to say. A handful of Republican-dominated states seem on the verge of invalidating President Biden's student loan forgiveness plan at the Supreme Court on Tuesday, with a majority of the court's conservatives indicating great skepticism. In 2003, after the 9/11 attacks, Congress passed a law to ensure that federal student loan borrowers would not be economically hammered in a national emergency. Specifically, the law says that when the president declares such an emergency, the Secretary of Education has the power to waive or modify any statutory or regulatory provision governing student loan programs. Both the Trump and Biden admins invoked the law to pause student debt payments without penalties during the pandemic. Then last year, President Biden, pressed by some progressives in his own party, went further with a plan to provide up to $20,000 in debt relief for borrowers with limited earnings. There again was no plan. Estimates of the plan's costs have ranged from $300 billion to $430 billion, but on Tuesday, the Supreme Court Chief Justice Roberts went high. We're talking about $500 billion in debt and 43 million borrowers. He said, if you're going to give up that much money and affect the obligations of that many Americans on a subject that's of great controversy, they would think that's something for Congress to act on, he added. Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar, representing the Biden admin, replied that Congress had acted when it passed the 2003 law, creating special provisions for student loan forgiveness during the declared national emergency. Brett Kavanaugh observed that when it comes to emergency powers, some of the biggest mistakes in the court's history were deferring to assertions of executive or emergency power, and some of the finest moments in our court's history were pushing back against presidential assertions of emergency power. Prelogar replied in this case, the Secretary of Education made the necessary findings to justify the loan forgiveness without relief for debtors. There will be a wave of default across the country, with all of the negative consequences that has for borrowers, she said. Indeed, she argued that the Biden plan is precisely the type of context where the executive should be able to implement those emergency powers. Sonia Sotomayor also focused on the borrowers. They don't have friends or families or others who can help them make these payments, she said, adding that many of them will have to default, worsening their financial situation. Once you default, the hardship on you is exponentially greater. You can't get credit. You're going to pay higher prices for things. You're going to continue to suffer from this pandemic in a way that the general population doesn't. Conservative Justices Clarence Thomas, Neil Gorsuch, and Amy Coney Barrett countered that a provision that gives the Education Secretary the power to waive and modify the terms of federal student loans is not the same thing as erasing all or part of these loans, wiping the debt off the books. Well, that's because you can't just wipe the debt off the books. One way or another, this debt is going to be paid. And it's going to be paid out of your tax dollars, out of your pocket. The court's three liberals had a very different view. Elena Kagan pointed out the expansive words of the statute. We deal with the congressional statutes every day that are really confusing, Kagan said. This one is not. The biggest sticking point of the day, though, was whether the 6 state objectors have legal standing to challenge the student loan forgiveness plan at all. If they can't show that they have suffered a concrete harm, they have no right to sue. On Tuesday, The states hung their argument on a claim that the Biden plan, by discharging millions of loan, would end up depriving the state of Missouri of revenue from the Missouri Higher Education Loan Authority, known as MOHELA, which we talked about this yesterday. It's been set up as an independent corporate entity with the ability to bring suits on its own, Kagan said. Usually we don't allow one person to step into another's shoes and say, I think that person suffered a harm, even if the harm is very great. We'll walk that back for just a second, because I analyzed MOHELA yesterday. And a part of the issue with Missouri and MOHELA is the fact that Missouri's their pension plan is tied into MOHELA, which means that investment, because it is a solid investment, and it is, even though it's an independent entity, it is also, it's being used by the government essentially as a piggy bank, which means that the pensioners of the state of Missouri could see a concrete harm if MOHELA does go under. Again, my big thing with that is the fact that I don't think that MOHELA would go under. Because again, this money is going to get paid. It's going to come out of the taxpayer pockets. The issue at hand is that, and this is why I say this isn't a proposal or a plan, is that there is no proposal to appropriate these funds. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson added that the court should be concerned about jumping into the political fray unless we're prompted to do so by a lawsuit that's brought by someone who has actual interest. Justice Barrett was even more pointed. If MOHELA is an arm of the state, then why don't you just strong-arm MOHELA and say that you've got to pursue the suit? Nebraska Solicitor General James Campbell, representing all 6 GOP states, replied that it was a question of state politics, but argued that, as a matter of law, if the state has the authority to assert its interest. At the end of a 3.5-hour argument, the bottom line remained the same. Unless the court decides that the states have no standing to sue and throws the case out of court, the Biden student loan forgiveness will likely be struck down. So, something that we will see coming off of that. From Insider, Amy Coney Barrett joins the liberal Supreme Court justices in scrutinizing a student loan company's involvement in one of these lawsuits blocking Biden's debt relief. From Eilert Sheffy and Oma Sadiq. Amy Coney Barrett, a conservative, questioned whether a group of Republican-led states can legally challenge President Biden's student loan forgiveness, similar to points raised by the Supreme Court's 3 liberals on Tuesday. The nation's highest court heard oral arguments in 2 high-profile challenges to Biden's plan that would cancel up to $20,000 in student debt for federal borrowers. The first case heard on Tuesday involved 6 states, which argued that the debt relief would hurt their state's tax revenue, along with the revenue of Missouri-based student loan company MOHELA. The Biden admin claims that 6 states, Arkansas, South Carolina, Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska, and Missouri, lack standing or the power to block Biden's relief by showing that they suffered an injury from it. MOHELA previously denied having any involvement in the case, and the Biden admin argued in a court brief that the company can sue and be sued on its own, and the states do not have the standing to declare harms to MOHELA as harms to themselves. Barrett scrutinized the relationship between Missouri and MOHELA, repeatedly questioning whether the states could sue the Biden admin over the debt relief. It would be hard to see how a win for the state would benefit MOHELA, or a win for MOHELA would benefit the state. If the assets are completely separate, then you don't get any money out of it, Barrett told Nebraska Solicitor General James Campbell, who's representing the states. If the state wanted money from MOHELA right now, Barrett added, does the state have the authority to do that? Well, they would have to sell the stock. Campbell defended that Missouri has an ultimate interest in the property of MOHELA, and the state legislature could take action to request the money. Yet Barrett continued to question the state's position, saying all this would be a lot easier if MOHELA had filed the lawsuit against the Biden admin. Do you want to address why MOHELA's not here? Barrett asked Campbell. Campbell then claimed that the state has the authority to speak for MOHELA, but Barrett again pushed back. Why didn't the state just make MOHELA come then? She said. If MOHELA is an arm of the state, then why don't you just strong-arm MOHELA and say you've got to pursue this suit? That is a question of state politics, but we believe as a matter of law that the state has the authority to assert its interests, Campbell said. While a majority of the court's conservatives largely focused on whether Biden exceeded his legal authority by enacting the debt relief, Barrett mostly turned her attention to the issue of standing, which the court's three liberals, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Brown-Jackson, likewise scrutinized. If Mohila is being injured as a result of the plan, or at least if that's the allegation, Mohila has the ability to defend itself and its interests, correct? Jackson asked the U.S. Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar, who argued on behalf of the Biden admin. So, an interesting take on that, and once again, I don't know that the states are going to have standing. That's actually something I question about this entire thing. Because I don't think that they will. But the oral arguments are in, and we're going to see more of this from MarketWatch. Chief Justice Roberts has questions on student loan cancellation. How does that fit under the normal understanding of modify? From Victor Recladis. The question above came from Chief Justice John Roberts as the Supreme Court heard oral arguments Tuesday on challenges to President Biden's plan to cancel a big tranche of federal student loans. The Biden admin has been arguing that an existing law, the HEROES Act, authorizes the Secretary of Education to waive or modify any statutory or regulatory provision applicable to student financial assistance programs if the Secretary deems such an action necessary to ensure that borrowers are not hurt financially because of the national emergency. But Roberts, who has been viewed as a swing vote, appeared to be questioning whether modify could mean canceling a wide range of loans before posing the question above. The Chief Justice quoted a part of a 1994 opinion written by Antonin Scalia. The bit from Scalia was the following. Modify, in our view, connotes a moderate change. It might be good English to say that the French Revolution modified the status of the French nobility, but only because there is a figure of speech called understatement and a literary device known as sarcasm. Elizabeth Prelogar, the U.S. Solicitor General, offered a response to Roberts and his reference to Scalia's opinion. I don't read that as opinion to set forth the universal meaning of modify, said Prelogar, who was making the Biden admin's case before the High Court. Technically, Roberts is wrong in this because the cancellation would be a modification. It would be a modification of who is picking up the tab. Again, I point out the fact that this is not actually going away. This cash that they're talking about is not disappearing into thin air. It's just not. Our progressive friends think that it is, but it's not. It's going to be there, and it's going to be there forever. So yes, there is a modification of that, but to saddle the U.S. taxpayers with that kind of cash and debt, that is the problem. From CNN, I might have to get up and blow my nose. It's getting bad. I hate the tail end of a cold. Takeaways from the Supreme Court's arguments in cases challenging Biden's student debt relief plan from Tierney Sneed and Devon Cole. The Supreme Court on Tuesday heard oral arguments in two challenges to President Biden's student debt relief plan, with several conservative justices appearing skeptical of the government's authority to discharge millions of dollars in federally held loans. If the conservatives do ultimately rule in favor of the policy's challengers, the hearing made clear they would have to grapple with the legal questions around why states and individual borrowers should be allowed to sue over the program. Questions that emerged as a flashpoint during the arguments. Millions of qualified borrowers could see up to $20,000 of their debt canceled depending on the outcomes of the arguments. How and when the justices rule will also determine when the payments on federal student loans will resume after a pandemic-related pause was put in place nearly 3 years ago. As I said yesterday, I can answer when the payments will resume, and that will be after the next Republican takes office as president. In Biden v. Nebraska, a group of Republican-led states argued the admin exceeded its authority by using the pandemic as a pretext to mask the true goal of fulfilling a campaign promise to erase student loan debt. That does bring an interesting side to this, because that does make it political in a way that it's not been political before. Because if it's specifically there to make a campaign promise, then we're using this money misappropriated as a campaign donation. Conservatives see this case as another chance to rein in aggressive action by Biden. In the questions the conservative justices pose, they signal that they see the GOP state's case as presenting the court with another chance to draw the lines around when the executive branch can and cannot act without Congress. Several of the exchanges concerned the application of the so-called major questions doctrine, a legal theory embraced by the court's Republican appointees that says Congress can be expected to speak with specificity when it gives an agency power to do something of great political or economic significance. The states are arguing that under the doctrine, the Biden student debt program should be blocked. John Roberts raised the doctrine as he told the U.S. Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar that the case presents extraordinarily serious, important issues about the role of Congress. We take very seriously the idea of separation of powers, and that power should be divided to prevent its abuse, Roberts said. Brett Kavanaugh asked Prelogar to compare the dispute with cases in the court's history where the court ultimately pushed back against the government claims that a national emergency justified the aggressive unilateral action by the executive branch. Conservatives bring up pinko pox authority and knowledge. Kavanaugh also sought some context on how the court should see the current dispute over student debt relief fitting within the larger spectrum of other cases dealing with how the executive branch actions aimed at the pinko pox pandemic. In some of those cases, Kavanaugh noted the court ruled that the agency exceeded its authority, and in others, the agency action was upheld, particularly when the executive branch action was found to be in the wheelhouse of the agency that implemented it. Gorsuch, meanwhile, asked the Nebraska Solicitor General James Campbell, who was representing the red states, a series of questions that seemed aimed at helping the court further flesh out the doctrine. I understand the Secretary of Education has considerable expertise when it comes to educational affairs. But in terms of macroeconomic policy, do we normally assume that every Secretary, Cabinet member, as learned as they are, has that kind of knowledge? That's fair. Lawyer for the GOP states gets grilled on standing. And we've talked about that a bit, and whether or not there's actual standing. Barrett may be a justice to watch, but her vote alone won't be enough to save the Biden program. Sotomayor raises the practical stage of the case. Well, there's too many poor people that don't have any help. And conservatives ask if Biden's plan is fair since not everyone benefits, which has been an argument from the beginning of this entire thing. So, a lot happening here. Now the protest. From Axios, Democrats go after Supreme Court on student debt forgiveness, from Eugene Scott. Progressive lawmakers are accusing conservative Supreme Court judges of putting politics over legal analysis on President Biden's student debt forgiveness plan. Those lawmakers say existing legislation gives the Biden admin the authority to eliminate debt, a decision that is in the best overall interest of the economy. Several justices suggested on Tuesday that lawmakers should be involved in the Biden admin's desire to eliminate about $400 billion in debt without congressional authorization. The court has used the major question doctrine to strike down Democratic priorities like environmental regulations and the pinko pox vaccine mandates, Axios' Aaron Doherty reports. Pramila Jayapal, the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, told Axios, the reality is that the Supreme Court is just looking at legal authority and not the politics. If this wasn't an extreme MAGA court, which disqualifies her opinion right there, that seems to be bringing things other than the legal analysis into question, I think this would be an open and shut case. It actually would, and it actually would be open and shut quicker in the favor of the Republican states. Cory Bush said, "I've heard from people across the country who have shared how this relief would change their lives from being able to afford childcare to paying their medical bills to being able to put food on the table." So again, it's the tiers of, oh, these people didn't know what they were doing. But let's make sure that younger people than that can vote. Let's talk about the protests. A little short one here from WTOP. About 60 students from across the country camped outside the Supreme Court on Monday night, hoping to be the first in line for seats inside the chamber to witness Tuesday's historic arguments over canceling student debt. The students were pelted by a brief downpour of rain, but said that they would wait through the night for the chance to see the justices provide over the arguments on whether the Biden admin can broadly cancel student loan debt. It's an insurrection, I say! People who are disagreeing with what the government is doing, camped out outside a government building in D.C., that's an insurrection! Oh wait, no, that's only if Republicans do it. So, not a whole lot going on with that. Not a big thing, obviously, but that is what we have coming for that. Alright, let's shift gears here. Let's talk about, since we're talking about insurrection, let's talk about the pretend insurrection and the footage from that from CNN. McCarthy grants access to Capitol security footage to January 6 defendants. From Manu Raju, Holmes Librand, and Hannah Rabinovitz. House Speaker McCarthy's office said on Tuesday that lawyers for defendants facing charges in the January 6, 2021 Selfie Fest will be granted access to U.S. Capitol security footage as the top House Republican has faced scrutiny for allowing Fox News host Tucker Carlson to view the video before widely releasing it. Not only will this be for the active cases, but I hope that this comes for the people who are actively seeking to appeal their guilty pleas, their railroads into guilty pleas, and their convictions without a guilty plea. The House Admin Subcommittee on Oversight is making accommodations to schedule time for an attorney representing a defendant, McCarthy spokesman Mark Bednar told CNN. Republicans defended the move in a way to ensure due process for defendants. Everyone accused of a crime in this country deserves due process, which includes access to evidence which may be used to prove their guilt or innocence. It is our intention to make available any relevant videos and documents on a case-by-case basis as requested by attorneys representing defendants, Barry Loudermilk, subcommittee chairman, said in a statement. The access for defendants accused of the January 6th Selfie Fest has already come up in court. Joseph McBride, an attorney for several Capitol Selfie Fest defendants, told CNN on Tuesday that McCarthy's office granted him access to 41,000 hours of Capitol security footage from that day, and he has filed in court to seek a delay in one defendant's trial. For the first time since the inception of the case, the full context of the January 6th is receiving intensive public scrutiny, as 41,000 hours of CCTV footage relevant to the Selfie Fest has been made available to the defendant and members of the public, McBride wrote in a recent filing, asking to delay his client Ryan Nichols' upcoming trial. And that is, by the way, epic. I'm glad to see people actually having the opportunity to defend themselves. They should have that opportunity, absolutely. And they should have access to all of the evidence. But we will see what's happening with that. Let's talk about Tucker. We're going to look at this here for just a second. I'm going to step away and see if I can't curb some of what's happening with this cold, so bear with me. Maybe I'm not. Darn you, CBS. Alright, let's read. Fox News host Tucker Carlson's staff was permitted to view, but not record, portions of some 41,000 hours of police videos documenting the events of January 6th, with the opportunity to request copies of some of the clips under an agreement reached with the House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's office, according to the high-ranking Republican member of the subcommittee that oversees the U.S. Capitol Police. Barry Loudermilk of Georgia, who chairs the subcommittee, the House Committee on Administration, told CBS News that a screening station was set up for Fox News team to view videos from the riot. The staffers were not allowed to record or remove any of the videos from the screening area, he said. The Fox News team may request any particular video clips that they may need and will make sure that there's nothing sensitive, nothing classified, including escape routes, Loudermilk said. We don't want Al-Qaeda to know certain things. He said the clips requested by Fox News and cleared for release by his committee would eventually be made public and available to other media outlets, many of which have demanded equal access to the footage. Loudermilk said the time frame for the release to Fox and the public remains unclear. Hopefully sooner rather than later, but I think we're talking about weeks to months. Later at the Capitol, McCarthy defended his decision to make the footage available, telling reporters that he wanted to make sure that we don't play politics with the footage's release and ensure that everyone is able to get it. So it does look like, now, the first panic attack that we had about this was, it's just going to release it all raw, unredacted, and they're going to see everything. Capitol secrets. It's going to be terrorism. They're going to inspire January 6th number 2. Oh my God. But it does look like there's actually being some care offered to what they can see, what they have access to. And I don't think there should be. This is one of those situations where, again, we should have access to every second of the footage. It doesn't matter. This is the people's house anyway. You can afford your private security. You've got your own private police force in the area. I don't necessarily care because you are CCTVing all this footage for use in things like this. That you think that Joe Blow down the street getting access to this is going to somehow put you in a danger. In the most surveilled building, in the most surveilled city in the world. Forgive me if I don't take your concerns seriously. Let's listen to Tucker here for a moment. Daily Wire reporting that Loudermilk is saying that his access is limited.
So for really more than 2 years now, we've been complaining about, and we think it's justified, the fact that the U.S. Congress has held thousands, tens of thousands of hours of closed-circuit camera footage from the public. They have not released any of it from January 6th. And January 6th, of course, is a transformative event in this country. It's been used to change the country. So there are about 44,000 hours. And we have, you may have read this today, been granted access to that. And we believe that access is unfettered. We believe we have secured the right to see whatever we want to see. So we've been there about a week. Our producers, some of our smartest producers, have been there looking at this stuff and trying to figure out what it means and how it contradicts or not the story that we've been told for more than 2 years. We think already that in some ways it does contradict that story. And so we're going to spend the rest of this week taking a look at it, assessing it as honestly as we can, and we're going to bring you what we find next week.
I don't say this often, but thank you, Tucker. Man, just the tail end of that cold. I needed that for just a moment. But let's read a little bit more into what's going on with this here. Key Republican lawmaker says Fox News host Tucker Carlson does not have unrestricted use of the January 6th U.S. Capitol surveillance footage. As much as I was hopeful when they released it, there was a part of me deep down inside that said, yeah, they're not going to just let this go unfettered. It's not going to happen. It's basically controlled access to be able to view the tapes. Can't record, can't take anything with you, said Loudermilk of Georgia, who chairs the House Admin Subcommittee on Oversight in response to a question from The Hill. Carlson's team may request any particular clips that they may need, then we'll make sure that there's nothing sensitive, nothing classified, including escape routes. Loudermilk told CBS News, "We don't want Al-Qaeda to know certain things." So I am pretty sure that whatever it is that Tucker gets is going to be just as redacted as anything that basically comes from the government at this point. All right. From the Wall Street Journal, actually going back and looking at some things from before. Federal agencies didn't share some threat insights before January 6th attack, report says. You don't say. You know, it's almost like this was a setup. From C. Ryan Barber. Federal agencies responsible for securing the Capitol failed to adequately share intelligence about potential violence ahead of the Selfie Fest, hindering the response to the pro-Trump mob that stormed the building and disrupted the peaceful transfer of power on that day. It didn't prevent crap. They were back to work within 2 hours. In a 122-page report, the nonpartisan GAO found the FBI and the Capitol Police identified credible threats in the weeks leading up to the January 6th Selfie Fest, and received tips including one about planning to confront the Democratic lawmakers and block them from entering the building. But a failure by multiple agencies, a failure, you say, to fully process and share that information left law enforcement unprepared for the unprecedented attack on the Capitol, the Selfie Fest, as lawmakers convened to certify the results of the 2020 election, the report said. Again, I just want to remind you all of some things, and the most important part of this is the fact that now the government is coming out to say this, which tells me that there is something in those tapes that they didn't want anybody to see. With that being said, I knew that this was going to be basically a setup. From the beginning, from the first time I heard about this, and I've said this on this program before, from the very first moment that I heard somebody say, "Oh, we're going to the Capitol and we're going to go back and tell them what we think about that," I said, "You're going to get shot." To my great joy, my worst fears about this entire thing didn't come true. I cannot tell you how relieved I am that only one person died. And I hate the fact that she had to die, if she ever existed in the first place, a la Stephen Ignoramus. But when I first heard about this entire thing, I thought this was going to be a bloodbath. That you were going to corner and corral Republican Trump supporters into the halls of Congress with the National Guard holding rifles, getting ready to take down swaths of them all at once. Especially using the DC National Guard. Instead, for the most part, people are arrested based on circumstantial evidence at best, and forced to sit for years at a time in solitary confinement, in horrifying conditions, leaving many of them felons unable to vote again. But when they say they identified credible threats and didn't act on them, did they not act on them deliberately? That's always been the question with that. I knew back at the end of November that people were planning on gathering on the Capitol in large numbers. We'll skip the CBS one from here, because that's saying the same thing as the Wall Street Journal did, and that is actually all that we have on January 6th. A little bit of a failure to land, because again, you know, a lot of people legitimately thought, and I don't know why, that Tucker Carlson was just going to get unfettered, unrequited access to go back and doctor these up as much as he wanted to. And now it seems that no, he's just going to be able to send his staffers into a building, into the booth, and look in and see what's happening here, and maybe request a tape before they go back and highly redact it. to make it tell the story that they wanted to tell. All right. Hey, let's do what we couldn't finish up yesterday. Government officials behaving badly. We're going to start with the new nominee for Labor Secretary. From CNN, Biden to nominate Julie Su as Labor Secretary. From Manu Raju, Phil Mattingly, Kevin Liptak, and Megan Vasquez. President Biden will nominate Julie Su to serve as Labor Secretary, the White House confirmed on Tuesday, which would make her the first Asian American to serve in a secretary-level role in Biden's cabinet. Is Yellen not Asian? I thought Janet Yellen was Asian. Su, who has served as the Deputy Labor Secretary since 2021, replaced Marty Walsh, who is departing the admin next month for a job atop the NHL Players Association. The swift effort to nominate Su to replace Walsh, the first cabinet secretary to leave the Biden admin, comes at a crucial moment for the... Didn't the nuclear secretary get canned? I don't think Marty Walsh is the first one to leave. Maybe on his own volition, but I don't think that's right, CNN. Comes at a crucial moment for the American economy and workforce they have confirmed to lead the agency. Su will serve as an essential messenger for the admin's efforts to stabilize the economy and strengthen labor rights as the country continues to grapple with the recession fears. Biden, in a statement, called Su a tested and experienced leader who will continue to build a stronger, more resilient, and more inclusive economy that provides Americans a fair return to their work and an equal chance to get ahead. I look forward to working with Julie. She sure smells nice, man. To build an economy that works for the working people. Middle out. And I respectfully ask the Senate to take up this nomination quickly, so we can finish the job for America's workers. In a statement, Vice President Kamala Harris called Su a longtime advocate for workers. First in my home state of California, and now as a leader in the Biden-Harris admin. Harris said, adding first her own name into the Biden admin, which does not belong there, and adding that Su understands the future of our economy depends on building a well-trained and inclusive workforce. And a workforce that's made up of workers. And workers work in a workforce. That's how that works. So we see CNN's glowing praise of her. Let's see some pushback. From the Daily Wire, Biden taps California official who oversaw billions in COVID unemployment fraud to serve as labor secretary. From Ben Ziesloft. President Brandon announced on Tuesday that he will nominate Julie Su, who oversaw billions in pandemic relief fraud during her time as senior official in California, to replace Marty Walsh. Su is a deputy, we saw that. Over several decades, Julie has led the largest state labor department in the nation, cracked down on wage theft, fought to protect trafficked workers, increase the minimum wage, create good-paying jobs, high-quality jobs, and establish and enforce workplace safety standards, man. Come on. Walsh departs the Labor Department to lead the National Hockey League Players Association, a union which represents athletes in the NHL. His tenure was marked by rail unions threatening to enact a nationwide strike ahead of the midterm elections, which led to the Biden admin negotiating an agreement granting workers 24% pay raises and more robust health benefits. Su nevertheless blamed the Trump admin for purportedly neglecting to offer adequate guidance on distributing the resources and countering fraudulent claims. It should be no surprise that the EDD was overwhelmed, just like the rest of the nation's unemployment agencies, she continued. And we know now that as millions of Californians applied for help, international and national crime rings were at work behind the scenes, working relentlessly to steal unemployment benefits using sophisticated methods of identity theft. Yeah, that's a good way to go back into your new job overseeing the department, is to blame an admin that hasn't been in power for 2 years. So this is going to be another joke of an appointment. From Reuters. U.S. watchdog to audit Buttigieg on government jet use. No author given. A U.S. government watchdog will audit Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg's use of government airplanes for some trips, his office said on Monday. The Transportation Department Office of Inspector General will review 18 flights Buttigieg made on an FAA planes over 7 trips. The cost of the flights for Buttigieg and staff was $41,905 US dollars and 20 US cents. In 6 of the 7 trips, costs to fly on FAA planes were less expensive than flying commercial, the department confirmed to Reuters. And it does beg the question, did he use these for official government business, or was this for the ability to bypass the lines of the TSA and not fly commercial? But he says, come on, give it a try. Buttigieg says he welcomes review of his use of a government jet from Julia Shapiro. Pete Buttigieg said on Tuesday that he welcomes a recently announced review of his use of Federal Aviation Administration jets in order to get past the politics. The Transportation Department's Inspector General announced on Monday that it would be auditing Buttigieg's use of the government aircraft and whether he complied with federal regulations, policies, and procedures in response to a request from Marco Rubio in December. Buttigieg told CNN on Tuesday that he travels on commercial airlines, economy class, the vast majority of the time, the remaining 10 to 20% of the time. Buttigieg says he uses the Department of Transportation's jet. Have we ever actually seen him fly commercial? When we use our agency's aircraft, it's not chartering a private jet, he added. This is a government aircraft that is assigned to the FAA. While Buttigieg said that he and his staff occasionally travel in the FAA jet due to a security or logistical issue, they typically do so because it's cheaper. The number one reason we would use that agency aircraft is it actually works out to be less expensive for taxpayers than the commercial airline ticket would be. We keep very meticulous records on that, so precisely so that if somebody wants to look at it, somebody wants to audit it, it's well documented, Buttigieg added. So I welcome that independent look so that we can get past the politics of this and make sure everyone understands the facts. That may be true, but one of the other problems that comes with this is the fact that the Progressive Caucus is dead set on ending all carbon emissions for everybody. Which means they should be packing as many people into those airplanes as they can, like sardines, to make sure that they get the most people on them and get the most carbon offset per person. And more Mayor Pete. In fact, speaking about climate change, dealing with climate change is one of the biggest things that people like me will be remembered for after we're gone, as he goes and gets on a private plane with FAA staff and Department of Transportation staff, rather than packing them in like sardines onto an airplane to make sure that each person's carbon footprint is offset.
Climate is not nonsense. Dealing with climate change is one of the biggest things that people like me and people like him will be remembered for after we're gone. And climate is not nonsense.
Good job, Mayor Pete, from the Blaze. Tulsi Gabbard getting in the news. Democrats and Biden have embraced the very same geneticist core principles embodied by Nazism and Adolf Hitler. From Joseph McKinnon. I believe we have video into this one. Yes. We have Token University hire. And we have Coconut Mommy.
Let's bring in Tulsi Gabbard.
So, We'll look into some of this. We'll watch the Token Diversity Hire video, and then we will watch Coconut Mommy. Tulsi Gabbard called out Democrats and the Biden admin Saturday for their continued embrace of identity politics, suggesting that they now share much in common with Adolf Hitler's Nazis. They share a lot in common with the Nazis, but we don't talk about that typically. During her appearance on Jesse Watters' Primetime, the former Democrat and Iraq war vet emphasized that their agenda of identity politics is directly undermining the traditional democratic values that they were expressed so beautifully and clearly by Dr. King. That we should judge each other not based on the color of skin, but based on our character. They're proud to be judging people, hiring people, selecting people based on race, said the former Hawaii Congresswoman. Really, when you cut to the core of it, when they're standing there saying, hey, we're proud to be selecting people solely based on race, this is alarming to me on so many levels. Axios recently noted that affirmative action is also on the chopping block nationwide, at least as it pertains to higher education. So let's listen first to Token Diversity Hire, then we will listen to Coconut Mommy, in probably close to her entirety, but not entirely.
The cabinet is majority people of color for the first time in history. The cabinet is majority female for the first time in history. A majority of White House senior staff identify as female. 40% of White House senior staff identify as part of the racially diverse communities. And a record 7 assistants to the president are openly LGBTQ+. So again, this is something that the president prides himself on.
The question is, can they do their jobs? Because you can't. Token Diversity Hire. Let's listen to Coconut Mommy.
She's a former presidential candidate and a Fox News contributor. And you can go down the list of the cabinet, Tulsi. I think we're a little tired of the diversity stuff.
Yeah, you know, Jesse, what we're seeing here is their philosophy of identity politics. And this is one of the main reasons why I left the Democratic Party, because you're seeing how their agenda of identity politics is directly undermining the traditional democratic values that were expressed so beautifully and clearly by Dr. Martin Luther King, that we should judge each other not based on the color of our skin, but based on our character. And yet, as you have displayed here over and over with example after example, they're proud to be judging people, hiring people, selecting people based on race, which is really, let's be clear how serious of a problem this is. It's based on genetics, race, based on your blood, your genes. And where do we see that connection? Well, these are the very same geneticist core principles embodied by Nazism and Adolf Hitler. And this should be something that is sickening and alarming to every single Democrat and every single American. We have seen where this philosophy can lead. The American people deserve so much more. We need leaders who will elect, who will select people based on their character, how committed they are to the Constitution, and the capabilities that they bring to actually do the job that they're hired to do. Most importantly, their heart. Do they have a heart and commitment for serving the American people? As you said, putting service above any selfish interest, actually waking up every day saying, how can I best serve the American people who I'm charged to serve in whatever job it may be?
You're saying the focus on genetics is in a way similar to what was going on in Germany.
You look at the core values and core principles of Adolf Hitler and Nazism. What is it based on? It's based on genetics. This is that philosophy of geneticism and discriminating against people based on their genes. And that's the issue here, really, when you cut to the core of it. When they're standing there saying, hey, we are proud to be selecting people solely based on race, that is alarming to me on so many levels. You see them, oh, we were going to select someone based on their race, based on their gender, these immutable characteristics that we're born with. This goes against, again, the very vision our founders had for us. It goes against traditional democratic values. And most of all, the American people deserve to know that those in positions of power and leadership are putting their interests first, regardless of race or gender or religion or politics or anything else. That's the responsibility of our leaders, and that's what we, the American people, deserve.
Yeah, I'm not.
Oh, Tulsi, you sweet, sweet, sweet summer child. No, that does not go against the values of the Democrat Party. It never has. It is all about diversity of skin. This has been, by the way, since I was in that party. I remember discussions like this when I was a Democrat, and I hated them then. The question always being, why should we elevate somebody based on the color of their skin? And at that time, getting the typical answer of, well, underrepresentation and no representation, this, that, and the next thing. I don't care what's in the pants of the person who is the secretary of department that I don't care about. Can that person do his or her job? And next question, of course, is, does that person believe that the government has the power to insert things the government doesn't have the power to do here? As long as the person has a succinct plan with details as to how to leave me alone better than the other person, I will support that person. No matter the skin color, what's in their pants, what they believe should be in their pants, religious ideology, or any other immutable characteristic that you can put onto somebody. As long as they have got a clear-cut plan as to how to leave me alone and get the government out of my life, you have my support. That is literally the only qualification that I have for a government official. All right, from Insider. Let's get some music back up here. Let's get the live chat back up here too. Joe Manchin said that he identifies as an American when asked if he still thinks of himself as a Democrat. Again, not dodging a question on his party loyalties. From Cheryl Tapp. Joe Manchin dodged a question on Sunday about whether he still thinks of himself as a member of the Democrat Party. Manchin was interviewed on Sunday Morning Futures with Barty Romo, where Maria repeatedly pressed him to say whether he still considers himself a Democrat. I identify as an American, Manchin told Barty Romo. I'm an American through and through. By the way, just a reminder, in deep, deep red West Virginia, over an election cycle where Manchin got very, 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 very famous. Manchin's up for re-election in 24. Just a reminder. During the same interview, Manchin called for unity between the two political parties. Good luck. My main concern is how do we bring this country together, Manchin said. How do we make it work? How do we make Democrats and Republicans become Americans again, not just party affiliates? Well, I think disconnecting television news for about 2 weeks would do the trick, but, you know, we don't have time for rational solutions. Now, this is a Rupar video, so I'm going to try to get it because, of course, obviously, for Insider we had archive. But let's go down to the 26th and see if we can't find this video. Eight hours, 4 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. Part of the problem with going back that far, obviously, because this is an older article for us too. That's the 27th. You know, it would be intelligent if I actually pre-queued some of this stuff. Aaron Rupar apparently is obsessed with Ron DeSantis. And of course he's obsessed with Donald Trump. There we go. So here is our clip of that.
Bad behavior. The country has to be about America and coming together.
Do you still identify as a Democrat?
I'll be involved any way I can. I'll be involved any way I can to help. I identify as an American. I'm an American through and through. Bad behavior. The country has to be about America and coming together.
Do you still identify?
And again, with that exchange, reminder, Joe Manchin is up for re-election in 24. From the Hill. You know what? Let's cue that up. Because we'll listen to the moron. Paul Ryan says he won't attend RNC if Trump is nominated in 2024. Reminder, I lived in Paul Ryan's district for most of my adult life. Basically from the time I turned 18 on until he resigned in... What the hell year did he resign? 18? Yeah, 18. And became a lobbyist instead. I lived in Paul Ryan's district up until that point. Technically, I still had a residence in Paul Ryan's district when I lived in Kenosha. Or when I lived in Mass, rather. Because I never changed my residence, so I still lived in Kenosha according to my driver's license, is number one. And number two was, there was that brief 2 years where I lived in the county of Dane, which is in District 2. So for most of the time that I've been a grown-up, this guy has been my rep. And boy, am I glad he retired. From Lawrence Vorsa. Former House Speaker Paul Ryan said he will not attend the Republican National Conference if former President Trump wins the party's presidential nomination in 2024. In an interview with WISN TV, Ryan said that he would only attend the RNC, which would be held in Milwaukee, if someone other than Trump was nominated. Yeah, you're a lobbyist. Literally nobody cares whether or not you go. It depends on who the nominee is. I'll be here if someone's not named Trump, he told WISN TV on Saturday, adding that he would even skip the event if it was in his own state. I'm not interested in participating in that. No, even in Wisconsin, he added. Ryan announced the results, naming Trump the Republican nominee in 2016 when he was the chair of the RNC convention. Ryan, a former vice presidential candidate for now Senator Mitt Romney, also said Saturday he does not think Trump will be the nominee in 2024. Yeah, and again, Paul Ryan, who are you at this point? You're another rich representative who came in with a large amount of money to start with, got even richer in Congress, and then turned around after you were so disappointed by the Republican Party for nominating Trump that you decided to go lobby as a unipartyist. A war pig. The problem with the Republican Party. God, I can't stand this guy. Let's listen.
He cost us the White House. A couple things. He's fading fast. He's a proven loser. He cost us the House in 18. He cost us the White House in 20. He cost us the Senate again and again. And I think we all know that. And I think we're moving past Trump. I really think that's the case. I can't imagine him getting the nomination, frankly. And I don't mean this because I don't want him to get the nomination. I just don't think he will as an analytical point. I think we're hopefully coming back full circle to being maybe a populist party. That's great and fine. I want to be popular, but principled and with policies that solve problems.
Again, when times got tough, you ran away. I'm waiting to see if this autoplays before we click off of this. It doesn't appear
Benjamin Franklin famously said...
All right, shut up, you. From the New York Post. South Carolina lawmaker proposes Yankee tax as Northerners flock to state in droves. Well, taxation is theft, number one. And number two, if you don't want that economic powerhouse coming into your state, Florida will take the Yankees. Tennessee will take the Yankees. Georgia will take the Yankees. From Sarah Rump of Fox Business. South Carolina State Senator Stephen Goldfinch proposed a bill dubbed the Yankee tax that will require new residents to pay up to $500 to move to the Palmetto State. Well, I can think of reasons not to go there. There's one of them right there. If passed by the state referendum, new residents moving from out of state to South Carolina will be required to pay 2 one-time fees. $250 for a new driver's license and $250 for vehicle registrations. Are you serious? How do you sleep at night? By the way, you're South Carolina. You should be pulling out the stops to get more people coming to your state. Not the other way around. It's a beautiful state, don't get me wrong. And I think that they got their head in the right place for politics, but clearly they don't, obviously, with something like that. But there are better ways to try to say, oh yeah, no, we gotta keep our Southern pride. People want to go there because you have lower fees, taxes, etc. So what's the first thing you come back and do is whack them with another tax. That seems counterproductive. You morons. I debated, by the way, when I started looking at distilling laws, starting to look at property in South Carolina because getting a license there is typically a lot easier than getting it here. Not anymore, screw you. South Carolina's not even on my radar anymore. Alabama congressman introduces bill to make AR-15 the national gun of America. This is just stupid, folks. This is just dumb. You're literally making a proposal that has no chance in the Senate to be reactionary. I think the AR platform is cool. There's no reason for it to be the national gun of America, unless you're trying to get a reaction out of people. If you want one, go buy another one. Plain and simple. Get some more ammo, hoe another row into the yard, and can some more fruits and veggies. But we don't need to do something like this. This is just wow. From Maggie Madison. There are several distinct American things: American football, country music, biscuits and gravy. However, one Alabama congressman wants to add to that list. Why? According to AL.com, Barry Moore is introducing a bill to make the AR-15 the national gun of America. I could think of like 10 better guns to be the national gun of America, if you have to have a national gun to begin with. The Glock 19 comes to mind. The Colt 1911 is distinctly a more American firearm than an AR platform. The official gun of America. A Smith & Wesson. After stopping at Family Firearms in Troy, the congressman said the anti-Second Amendment group won't stop until they take away all your firearms. One rule to remember: any government that could take away one right could take away all of them. The House has not been given the entire bill according to congressional records, but a summary of the bill says it plans to declare an AR-style rifle chambered in .223 Remington or a 5.56 by 45mm NATO to be the national gun of the United States. Alabama.com said the owner of Family Firearms, Sonny Parker, thanked Moore for his stance on the Second Amendment and the new bill. Again, number one, we don't need a national gun. We're the only country in the world that has gun rights anyway. And number two, I could think of 4 better guns off the top of my head that would make a better national gun than the mostly made in China AR platform. It's a meme. It's a fun meme, but it's a meme. I think this is the last one. Yeah, this is the last one for government officials behaving badly. From Forbes, senators use campaign donor money to buy their own books. You know why? Because then it looks like it's a bestseller. From Zach Everson. At least 6 senators who disclosed receiving income from books in 2020. Liz Warren, Tom Cotton, Joni Ernst, Tim Scott, Tammy Duckworth, and Sherrod Brown apparently use money from campaign owners to buy their own books. And this stupidity, by the way, is bipartisan. The transactions all seem to be legal. Lawmakers are allowed to dip into their campaign coffers to boost book sales, so long as those sales do not increase their personal royalties. Both the House and Senate place dollar limits outside employment, but there's an exception for publishing contracts, which are pre-approved by the ethics committees, said Brett Capel, an attorney specializing in campaign finance at Harman, Curran, Spielberg, and Eisenberg. The FEC has issued a long series of advisory opinions allowing members to use campaign funds to buy copies of their own books at a discount from the publisher, provided that the royalties that they would normally receive on those sales are given to charity. So they get to buy votes with a charity and also make it look like their books sold better than they did. Spokespeople for the 4 of the senators all said the campaigns follow the law regarding royalties. Yeah, that's understandable. We know what you're doing. Yes, it's cool that you're following the law, but this is a donor and taxpayer-funded ego trip. Plain and simple. From the Daily Wire, shifting gears out of government officials behaving badly, we'll have a little bit of fun with some things that I actually enjoy. It's not things I like and things that I hate just yet, although I think some of these things could wind up in that area. From the Daily Wire, Slack permanently suspends lips of TikTok from using their software. From Ryan Saavedra. The software company Slack informed Shaya Reichik, the founder of Libs of TikTok, this week that it permanently suspended her from being able to use their services over a violation the company would not disclose. Babylon Bee CEO Seth Dillon, who is a top supporter of Libs of TikTok, posted a screenshot of the email that the company sent explaining their decision not to do business with Reichik. We are writing to let you know that we've suspended your workspace, lot, chat, slack.com for violation of Libs of TikTok, obviously, for violations of our acceptable use policy, the company said. As highlighted in Slack's acceptable use policy, Slack may exercise its right to suspend or terminate your access. We have refunded the most recent monthly charge of $75 to your credit card, the email continued. You can expect to see a refund on your card in 5 to 7 business days. We can provide you with a copy of the data stored in your Slack instance by using an electronic file transfer service on request. Dillon responded to the email by tweeting, Slack HQ has permanently suspended Libs of TikTok. If your business is defending kids, Slack doesn't want your money. Here's a legitimate question for you. and I'm being serious about this, why are you using Slack to begin with? It's the same thing with like all these companies out there that insist on using Microsoft Teams. My last job, which I will not name, obviously, of course, because I do like them, I still do business with them, and I want to make sure that they don't get protested for me saying the wrong thing on here. I've always been very careful guarding where I work because, you know, they didn't ask to be in the political fray. I did. And we don't discuss politics when I'm at work. But with that being said, for my old job, I actually made a Discord server, a company-wide Discord server. And then shortly after, I was rebuffed for my efforts. And, I mean, it was fully functioning, ready to go. They implemented Microsoft Teams, which is completely non-functional and useless. A Discord server would be 100 times better, and that's working in tandem of things that are actually socially acceptable at this point. And I remember when Discord was not socially acceptable. Discord became socially acceptable as it started getting picked up by games like Party in My Dorm, by Twitch streamers who had the right politics and things like that. But Discord it used to be the gaming platform that was completely overrun by Nazism. That got cleaned up as soon as they started making money from progressives. But even with that being said, that would be a better platform for Chaya Raichik. And obviously, of course, there's Guilded out there, which we don't use Guilded around here because Discord is so prevalent in most of our discourse, and most people have Discord. Few people have even heard of Guilded. I would like to see more people jump over to Guilded as Discord becomes more censorious, which they are becoming more censorious. But with that being said, and my Guilded, I think, is up currently. Yes, it is up from my last restart. I mean, that's even a more functional platform. And we know, like, Slack hates anybody who goes outside of the norm, the political norm. They've been very open about this. So again, my biggest question out of all of this is, why the hell would you use Slack? Especially for something political. Now, of course, if you're working outside of the political realm, and a company that uses like Microsoft Teams or Slack or something, and you need it for your job, that's one thing. But to specifically get into the Lion's Den and make a Slack channel to talk out about things that Slack supports does not seem like the best idea for me. And this may be a blessing in disguise, rather, and look for the Libs of TikTok official Discord server, which I think may be coming in the near future. We don't know. From CNN. Dilbert distributor and book publisher drops creators Scott Adams over his racist remarks. I have actually not heard what Scott Adams said that got him into hot water. I know that he's being canceled. I know that he's going through cancel culture, but I've not heard what he said. So I do hope that that CNN tells me what he said. I know this is a couple days old, but this one's important to me. From John Pasantino and Oliver Darcy. Andrews McMeel Universal, the company that syndicates Dilbert, said it's cutting ties with the comic strips creator Scott Adams after his racist remarks about black Americans led hundreds of newspapers across the country to drop the satirical cartoon. I hate the end of a cold, I really do. In a joint statement, Andrews McMeel chairman Hugh Andrews and CEO and president Andy Sarayan said the syndication company was severing our relationship with Adams and condemned his remarks, saying, "We will never support any commentary rooted in discrimination or hate." The publisher of a forthcoming book from Adams also said Monday it would no longer move forward with publishing the title. Dude, self-publish. You have the money to self-publish. The Penguin Random House imprint portfolio said it wouldn't publish Adams' upcoming book, Reframe Your Brain. The book was set to release in September. My publisher for non-Dilbert books has canceled my upcoming book and the entire backlist, Adams wrote Monday on Twitter. He also said his book agent canceled him. Though McNeil's decision could be one of the most significant repercussions for the comic strip, hundreds of newspapers across the country already stopped running Dilbert. Adams effectively encouraged segregation in a shocking rant on YouTube, calling Black Americans a hate group and suggesting that white people should get the hell away from them. Is this the video? No, that's not the video. The USA Today network, which operates hundreds of newspapers, said it had pulled the plug on the long-running comic strip. The Washington Post and the Plain Dealer, also in Cleveland, said they would no longer carry the comic. Adams' comments came in response to a poll from the conservative firm Rasmussen Reports that said 53% of Black Americans agreed with the statement, "It's okay to be white." So this I'm obviously not going to read because I said it's okay to be white, so my days on YouTube are numbered. This I'm not going to read. I am going to look and see if I can find the rant after we're off air here, because now I'm curious. And there are a bunch of people that are dropping him, including, as we've said, the USA Today, no surprise there. They have such a liberal bent, it's not even funny. USA Today, other newspapers dropped Dilbert over creator Scott Adams' racially charged comments. From Amanda Prestigiacomo. And I think we are going to end it after this one. We're going to do Twitter trending and head out of here for the day because, number one, the last of this cold is beating the crap out of me. And number two, we do have to... I got to get some dinner. USA Today and Cleveland.com announced that they will no longer run the Dilbert cartoons in newspapers over comments creator Scott Adams recently made concerning race. In a real copy with Scott Adams' video posted Wednesday, Adams discussed a Rasmussen poll that nearly half of Black Americans were unable to agree with the phrase, "It's okay to be white." Adams' video, in which he suggested the poll results indicate that blacks are a hate group, went viral. The USA Today network will no longer publish the Dilbert comic due to recent discriminatory comments by its creator, Gannett said in a statement Friday, adding, "At Gannett, we lead with inclusion and strive to maintain a respectful and equitable environment for the diverse communities we serve nationwide." And let me just go over to Amazon and see if I can find any Dilbert books. Because I don't know if Bezos will have canceled it yet, but I want to buy some of these now. And the 2023 day-to-day calendar. Honestly, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I support Scott Adams and his freedom of speech, and I very much enjoy Dilbert. I always have. Cleveland's The Plain Dealer similarly said Friday that Dilbert will no longer be published on any of its papers over Adams' racist rant. "This is not a difficult decision," Plain Dealer, Cleveland.com VP of Content, Chris Quinton said. We've read from Cleveland.com. They are a left-wing rag too, by the way. "We're not a home for those who espouse racism. We certainly do not want to provide them with financial support. Until we decide what to replace Dilbert with, you'll likely see a gray box where it has been appearing," he added. Adams in the video joked that he'd been identifying as black for some time, but must have accidentally joined a hate group based on a recent Rasmussen poll. The poll, which surveyed 1,000 people, showed that 53% of black people agreed with the statement, "It's okay to be white," leaving 47% unable to say they agree. So, I will be looking into this video. I want to hear it from Scott himself. And I've never listened to a Scott Adams video, so I have no idea. But again, you have your freedom of association. Scott Adams, by the way, made his bed when he started. I'm surprised it lasted this long. By the way, there is a 2023 day-to-day calendar on Amazon that is about to show up on my desk. I know I'm already 3 months in, but 2 months in. But we're going to use that one. I'm going to do that one. It'll be the first time in forever I've had a daily calendar. Alright, so that is what we have for that. Let's do Twitter trending and head out of here for the day. Mostly so I can go find an allergy pill or a cold pill and see if I can kick the last of this here. Maybe I'll just go to bed. Alright, explore page. Trending. Let's see what's trending today, what Twitter thinks that we should be talking about on a Tuesday. And number one trending right now is we are going back into K-pop, which we usually do in the mornings. Or we did in the mornings when I did a morning show. Mini Moni face on the street. This is the type of energy I need for ticketing for August D Suga Tour March 1st. Veteran Army, Butter and Dynamite Army, Suga. I don't know what any of this means. Armies knowing there's going to be a high demand for August D Suga Tour, but also Armies when Ticketmaster announces August D Suga Tour has a high demand. So apparently some prominent K-poppers are going on tour. And it's making it hard to get tickets for them in the US. Well, good luck to all of you. WWE Next is trending because WWE Next is on, NXT rather. All the UK people coming back each week. WWE NXT. Oh, we're going to have a speech. WWE, you're say the last woman standing, but I've been knocked down time and time again, but I have gotten back up. Let's listen.
JC, you know this because I trusted you. I shared everything with you. You know the last person I let betray me the way you did and beat me down was my own mother. She used me as her personal punching bag for years, and when I finally got the courage to run away from home as a teenager, I was determined to show my little brother that I could make it in WWE.
Oh, the bad acting. My God, the bad acting. And it was actually one of the reasons that I enjoyed watching it so much.
We can escape the constant cycle of pain and suffering. JC, you don't know the 100th of what I've been through. You say you're the last woman standing, but I have been knocked down time and time again, but I have gotten right back up. And next week at Roadblock, bring everything you have. It won't be enough because I will take every ounce of pain, suffering, and rage that I have built up inside of me to hammer the final nail in the coffin of toxic attraction.
Booker T is getting hyped about Roxanne joining the announced team. Things you'll love to see. Apparently she's the cutest. Meh. Great to see Nathan Frazier back. This is about to be a banger with Wesley. Well, I kind of say that from my childhood, WWE is probably one of the things that I do miss the most. It was good, bad acting, fun. For my friends who were not particularly athletic, but still enjoyed to see the athleticism. We got some really cool names that came out of it. Number 3 trending. IUBB. Got to watch film on this game and recognize the lack of energy for urgency. Teams that make runs in March figure out how to win after winning such an emotional game before. Learn from this and move on. IUBB. This must be March Madness, which we're probably going to start seeing coming some of this in here. I do not know enough about basketball to do March Madness. I think it'd be really cool, but I don't know enough about it to get into it and make an effective bracket. I've always said that I want to do more basketball. Maybe not now because of the BLM movement and the fact that it's been infected with politics, but looks like these guys just rolled out a Kilroy's for the first time since they got back from the Purdue game and decided to suit up. It's every time with this program, IUBB. So, okay, Iowa University is what's happening here. Iowa University basketball. I don't know what Iowa's season average from 3 is on the season, but I know it's not what they're shooting now. We need to stop the uncontested layups, and water will find its level for them from the outside. Plus, I'm at the game. Go Hoosiers. A Nebraska fan, apparently. Or, no, Indiana. Hoosiers are Indiana, not Nebraska. Troy Brown. Troy Brown Jr., wide open from the corner. Austin Reeves been putting up numbers, but yet Troy Brown Jr. still getting start after start. Troy Brown Jr., count your days. Bama needs to be on the court with AD. Troy Brown needs to be anywhere else. So apparently Troy Brown is not playing well. And he's a Lakers player. That's all that I know. Yeah, apparently that's Troy Brown's shooting record. And the last one is Ray, and this goes into the politics section. Oh, we might be looking into this tomorrow. This is 2 hours ago, so right when we were starting. Now, FBI Director Ray, origins of the pandemic are most likely a potential lab incident in Wuhan. That's not news. We've known that for a long time. And Chris Wray defending the FBI, sending 30 agents to arrest pro-life activist Mark Hoke in front of his family, but doing nothing about BLM activists who torch federal buildings. So let's put a pin in that, because we'll be listening to some of that tomorrow and talking more about this interview. Ray on Fox News, but let's listen to this one for now and see what our teaser is going to be for this.
I asked you also back then about the investigation into COVID origins. Is the FBI in charge of the investigation of the origins of the coronavirus?
We certainly have a role in looking into the origins of the coronavirus.
Now there's this Department of Energy study that says it's likely to have come from a lab leak, although the confidence is low. It cites the FBI. What is the determination by the FBI?
So, as you note, Brett, the FBI has for quite some time now assessed that the origins of the pandemic are most likely a potential lab incident in Wuhan. Let me step back for a second. You know, the FBI has folks, agents, professionals, analysts, virologists, microbiologists, etc., who focus specifically on the dangers of biological threats, which include things like novel viruses like COVID, and the concerns that in the wrong hands, some bad guys, a hostile nation state, a terrorist, a criminal, the threats that those could pose. So here you're talking about a potential leak from a Chinese government-controlled lab that killed millions of Americans, and that's precisely what that capability was designed for. I should add that our work related to this continues, and there are not a whole lot of details I can share that aren't classified. I will just make the observation that the Chinese government, seems to me, has been doing its best to try to thwart and obfuscate the work here, the work that we're doing, the work that our U.S. government and close foreign partners are doing, and that's unfortunate for everybody.
Okay, so, and again, we'll be talking more about this tomorrow because I want to listen to the rest of this interview. We knew this already. We knew that they were studying gain of function. We knew whether or not this was actually a specific thing, whether or not this was something that was deliberate or planned, we may never know. It is just as easy, as Styx has pointed out, that some janitor was told to get rid of the biosamples and take them into the incinerator and said, no, this is good meat. I'm going to take this over to the wet market and I'll get double my wage for selling these bats at the wet market. It's just as easily that as it's somebody threw a vial of coronavirus in the middle of Beijing airport and said, go spread it around the rest of the world.
A couple things.
Well,
he's fading fast. He's a proven loser. He cost us the House in 18. He cost us the White House in 20. He cost us the Senate again and again. And I think.
Shut up, you. Anyway, before we were so rudely interrupted by my former representative, it's not in question whether or not this was from the lab anymore. You're not revealing anything. Except for maybe the CNN Sims who've been told that this was a conspiracy theory might finally realize that no, everybody else was right for the first time, but they still will call us evil conspiracy theorists. Alright, we're done. We're out of here for the day. Let's get some outro music up, and I am going to go and kick the last of this cold out of my body because it is driving me nuts. So with this, we are out of here for the day. Thank you, everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat. If you like what you saw, make sure, of course, you hit the like, stick around over on the side, and subscribe if you're new over here or you're watching the replay and you haven't been here before. It does look, by the way, I looked at my analytics and our numbers are going up here, so a few of you guys are coming in here new. Thank you for that. Tell a few friends, get some more people in here for your evening news, or the nice part about it being YouTube is it's on demand as well. You can catch this anytime throughout the day, but remember, I can't say thank you like we do in the notebook unless you get at least one chat message in. Otherwise, I don't know that you were here and I don't know that you chatted, so do keep that in mind as well. We'll be back here tomorrow to look at more of what's happening, including more of the oral arguments with the student loan debt crisis. I think that it's going to be the top of this. We'll be talking about Roald Dahl. We'll be talking about something I'm thankful for. Just a little bit of what happened over the weekend. Of course, again, with family being involved, I'm not going to reveal a lot of details for this, but you know, again, it's going to be another slough off Wednesday of I'm thankful that I moved kind of thing. But we'll be talking about that. Plus, whatever news comes out in the next 22 hours. Looking forward to that. If you are on the Twitch side, stick around. We are going to go find somebody else to raid. And we'll be talking about this interview again tomorrow as well. Because I do want to see what Ray has to say about both going after the pro-life activists and leaving the BLM alone, but also the lab leak theory. See you here tomorrow. Same time, same channel. Looking forward to that. Until tomorrow, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.